The good news is, though, we're into Shemot, which means names. And it's commonly called Exodus in your English text. And we're doing a double portion reading today. So 9 chapters. So hang on. And we're doing that because we're not able to do the study last week due to, we had a visiting speaker that was here. So Tony Robinson, whose material we're actually using. His curriculum is the curriculum that we used last year and continuing to use this year. And it's good. It's a type of review, you might say. So anyway, I'll be reading from the Complete Jewish Bible. Shemot, chapter 1. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Yaakov. Each man came with his household. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yishakar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All told, there were 70 descendants of Yaakov. Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died, as did all his brothers and all that generation. The descendants of Israel were fruitful, increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew very powerful. The land became filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Joseph, but said to his people, "Look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous and powerful for us. Come, let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they will continue to multiply, and in the event of war, they might ally themselves with our enemies, fight against us, and leave the land altogether." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built for Pharaoh the storage cities of Pithom and Ramses. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, until the Egyptians came to dread the people of Israel and worked them relentlessly, making their lives bitter with hard labor, digging clay, making bricks, all kinds of field work. And in all this toil, they were shown no mercy. Moreover, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was called Shiphrah, and the other Puah. "When you attend the Hebrew women and see them giving birth," he said, "if it's a boy, kill him. But if it's a girl, let her live." However, the midwives were God-fearing women, so they didn't do as the king of Egypt ordered, but let the boys live. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and demanded of them, "Why have you done this and let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "It's because the Hebrew women aren't like the Egyptian women. They go into labor and give birth before the midwife arrives." Therefore, God prospered the midwives, and the people continued to multiply and grow very powerful. Indeed, because the midwives feared God, he made them founders of families. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: "Every boy that is born, throw in the river, but let all the girls live." Chapter 2. A man from the family of Levi took a woman who descended from Levi as his wife. When she conceived and had a son, Upon seeing what a fine child he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took a papyrus basket, coated it with clay and tar, put the child in it, and placed it among the reeds of the riverbank. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the river with her maids in attendance, walked along the riverside. Spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent her slave girl to get it. She opened it and looked inside, and there, in front of her, was a crying baby boy. Moved with pity, she said, "This must be one of the Hebrews' children." At this point, the sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Would you like me to go and find you one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter answered, "Yes, go." So the girl went and called the baby's own mother. Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will pay you for doing it." So the woman took the child and nursed it. Then, when the child had grown some, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she began to raise him as her son. She called him Moshe, explaining, "Because I pulled him out of the water." One day, when Moshe was a grown man, he went out to visit his kinsmen, and he watched them struggling at forced labor. He saw an Egyptian strike a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He looked this way and that, and when he saw that no one was around, he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrew men fighting with each other. To the one in the wrong he said, "Why are you hitting your companion?" He retorted, "Who appointed you ruler and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian?" Moshe became frightened. Clearly, he thought, the matter has become known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he tried to have Moshe put to death. But Moshe fled from Pharaoh to live in the land of Midian. One day, as he was sitting by a well, the 7 daughters of the priest of Midian came to draw water. They had filled the troughs to water their father's sheep, when the shepherds came and tried to drive them away. But Moshe, got up and defended them. Then he watered their sheep. When they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How come you're back so soon today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. More than that, he drew water for us and watered the sheep." He asked his daughters, "Where is he? Why did you leave the man there? Invite him to have something to eat." Moshe was glad to stay on with the man, and he gave Moshe his daughter, Zipporah, in marriage. She gave birth to a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, "I have been a foreigner in a foreign land." Sometime during those many years, the king of Egypt died, but the people of Israel still groaned under the yoke of slavery, and they cried out, and their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. God heard them groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. God saw the people of Israel, and God acknowledged them. Chapter 3. Now Moshe was tending the sheep of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Leading the flock to the far side of the desert, he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of Adonai appeared to him in a fire blazing from the middle of a bush. he looked and saw that although the bush was flaming with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Moshe said, I'm going to go over and see this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't being burned up. When Adonai saw that he had gone over to see, God called to him from the middle of the bush, Moshe, Moshe. He answered, Here I am. He said, Don't come any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your father, he continued, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov. Moshe covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Adonai said, I have seen how my people are being oppressed in Egypt and heard their cry for release from their slave masters, because I know their pain. I've come down to rescue them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that country to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the place of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amori, Perizi, Hivi, and Yevusi. Yes, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have seen how terribly the Egyptians oppressed them. Therefore, now come, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you can lead my people, the descendants of Israel, out of Egypt. Moshe said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? He replied, I will surely be with you. Your sign that I have sent you will be that when you have led the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moshe said to God, Look, when I appear before the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What am I to tell them? God said to Moshe, Eyeh asher eyeh. Here, and added, Here's what to say to the people of Israel. Eyeh has sent me to you. God said further to Moshe, Say this to the people of Israel. Yod he vah he, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered, generation after generation. Go, gather the leaders of Israel together and say to them, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, has appeared to me and said, I've been paying close attention to you and have seen what is being done to you in Egypt. And I have said that I will lead you up out of the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amori, Perizi, Hivi, and Yevusi, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will heed what you say. Then you will come, you and the leaders of Israel, before the king of Egypt, and you will tell him, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now please, let us go 3 days' journey into the desert so that we can sacrifice to Adonai our God. I know that the king of Egypt will not let you leave unless he is forced to do so. But I will reach out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do there. After that, he will let you go. Moreover, I will make the Egyptians so well disposed toward this people that when you go, you won't go empty-handed. Rather, all the women will ask their neighbors and house guests for silver and gold jewelry and clothing, with which you will dress your own sons and daughters. In this way, you will plunder the Egyptians. Chapter 4. Moshe replied, but I'm certain they won't believe me, and they won't listen to what I say, because they'll say, Adonai did not appear to you. Adonai answered him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a staff. He said, throw it on the ground. And he threw it on the ground. It turned into a snake, and Moshe recoiled from it. Then Adonai said to Moshe, put out your hand and take it by the tail. He reached out his hand and took hold of it, and it became a staff in his hand. This is so that they will believe that Adonai, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov, has appeared to you. Furthermore, Adonai said to him, now, put your hand inside your coat. He put his hand in his coat, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous, as white as snow. Then God said, now, put your hand back in your coat. He put his hand back in his coat, and when he took it out, it was as healthy as the rest of his body. If they won't believe you or heed the evidence of the first sign, they will be convinced by the second. But if they aren't persuaded, even by both these signs, and still won't listen to what you say, then take some water from the river and pour it on the ground. The water you take from the river will turn into blood on the dry land. Moshe said to Adonai, oh, Adonai, I am a terrible speaker. I always have been. And I'm no better now, even after you have spoken to your servant. My words come slowly. My tongue moves slowly. Adonai answered him, who gives a person a mouth? Who makes a person dumb or deaf, keen-sighted or blind? Isn't it I, Adonai? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth, and will teach you what to say. But he replied, please, Lord, send someone else. Don't you have anyone you want? Anyone you want. At this, Adonai's anger blazed up against Moshe. He said, don't you have a brother, Aharon, the Levi? I know that he's a good speaker. In fact, he is now coming out to meet you, and he'll be happy to see you. You will speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be your mouth and his, teaching you both what to do. Thus, he will be your spokesman to the people. In effect, for you, he will be a mouth, and for him, you will be like God. Now, take this staff in your hand, because you need it to perform the signs. Moshe left, returned to Yitro, his father-in-law, and said to him, I beg you to let me go, return to my kinsmen in Egypt, to see if they are still alive. Yitro said to Moshe, go in peace. Adonai said to Moshe in Midian, go on back to Egypt, because all the men who wanted to kill you are dead. So Moshe took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started out for Egypt. Moshe took God's staff in his hand. Adonai said to Moshe, when you get back to Egypt, make sure that you do before Pharaoh every one of the wonders I have enabled you to do. Nevertheless, I am going to make him hard-hearted, and he will refuse to let the people go. Then you are to tell Pharaoh, Adonai says, Yisrael is my firstborn son. I have told you to let my son go in order to worship me, but you have refused to let him go. Well then, I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, Adonai met Moshe and would have killed him had not Zipporah taken a flint stone and cut off the foreskin of her son. She threw it at his feet, saying, what a bloody bridegroom you are for me. But then God let Moshe be. She added, a bloody bridegroom because of the circumcision. Adonai said to Aharon, go into the desert to meet Moshe. He went, met him at the mountain of God, and kissed him. Moshe told him everything Adonai had said in sending him, including all the signs he had ordered him to perform. Then Moshe and Aharon went and gathered together all the leaders of the people of Israel. Aharon said everything Adonai had told Moshe, who then performed the signs for the people to see. The people believed when they heard that Adonai had remembered the people of Israel and seen how they were oppressed. They bowed their heads and worshiped. Chapter 5. After that, Moshe and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, here is what Adonai, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they can celebrate a festival in the desert to honor me. But Pharaoh replied, who is Adonai that I should obey when he says to let Israel go? I don't know Adonai, and I won't let Israel go. They said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please, let us go 3 days' journey into the desert so that we can sacrifice to Adonai our God. Otherwise, he may strike us with a plague or with the sword. The king of Egypt answered him, Moshe and Aaron, what do you mean by taking the people away from their work? Get back to your labor. Look, Pharaoh added, the population of the land has grown, yet you are trying to have them stop working. That same day, Pharaoh ordered the slave masters and the people's foremen, you are no longer to provide straw for the bricks the people are making, as you did before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves, but you will require them to produce the same quantity of bricks as before. Don't reduce it, because they're lazing around. This is why they're crying, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Give these people harder work to do. That will keep them too busy to pay attention to speeches full of lies. The people's slave masters went out, their foremen too, and said to the people, here's what Pharaoh says, I will no longer give you straw. You go yourselves and get straw wherever you can find it, but your output is not to be reduced. So the people were dispersed throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The slave masters kept pressing them, keep working, make your daily quota just as when straw was provided. The foremen of the people of Israel whom Pharaoh's slave masters had appointed to be over them, were flogged and asked, "Why haven't you fulfilled your quota of bricks yesterday and today, as you did formerly?" Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and complained to Pharaoh, "Why are you treating your servants this way? No straw is given to your servants, yet they keep telling us to make bricks. And now your servants are being flogged. But the fault lies with your own people." "Lazy," he retorted. "You're just lazy. That's why you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to Adonai.' Get going now and get back to work. No straw will be given to you, and you will still deliver the full amount of bricks." When they said, "You are not to reduce your daily production quota of bricks," the foreman of the people of Israel could see that they were in deep trouble. As they were leaving Pharaoh, they encountered Moshe and Aaron standing by the road, and they said to them, "May Adonai look at you and judge accordingly, because you have made us utterly abhorrent in the view of Pharaoh and his servants, and you have put a sword in their hands to kill us." Moshe returned to Adonai and said, "Adonai, why have you treated this people so terribly? What has been the value of sending me? For ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt terribly with this people. And you haven't rescued your people at all." Chapter 6. Adonai said to Moshe, "Now you will see what I'm going to do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand, he will send them off. With force, he will drive them from the land." God spoke to Moshe. He said to him, "I am Adonai. I appeared to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai, although I did not make myself known to them by my name Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. Also, with them I established my covenant to give them the land of Canaan, the land where they wandered about and lived as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians are keeping in slavery, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore, say to the people of Israel, 'I am Adonai. I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians, rescue you from their oppression, and redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am Adonai, your God, who freed you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. I will give it to you as your inheritance. I am Adonai." Moshe said this to the people of Israel, but they wouldn't listen to him because they were so discouraged and their slavery was so cruel. Adonai said to Moshe, "Go in and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel leave his land." Moshe said to Adonai, "Look, the people of Israel haven't listened to me. So how will Pharaoh listen to me? Poor speaker that I am." But Adonai spoke to Moshe and Aaron and gave them orders concerning both the people of Israel and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. These were the heads of their families. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, were Hanok, Palu, Hetzron, and Carmi. These were the families of Reuben. The sons of Shimon were Yemuel, Yamin, Hodad, Yakin, Zokar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These were the families of Shimon. These are the names of the son of Levi, with their descendants: Gershon, Chat, and Merari. Levi lived to be 137 years old. The sons of Gershon were Livni and Shimei, with their families. The sons of Chat were Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Chat lived to be 133 years old. The sons of Merari were Machli and Mushi. These were the families of Levi with their descendants. Amram married Jochebed, his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moshe. Amram lived to be 137 years old. The sons of Yitzhar were Korach, Nepheg, and Zichri. The sons of Uziel were Mishael, Etzaphan, and Sitri. Aharon married Elisheva, daughter of Aminadab, and the sister of Nachshon, and she bore him Nadav, Avihu, Eleazar, and Itamar. The sons of Korach were Asir, Elkanah, and Aviasaph. These were the Korchi families. Eleazar, the son of Aaron, married one of the daughters of Petuel, and she bore him Pinchas. These were the heads of the families of Levi, family by family. These are the Aaron and Moshe, to whom Adonai said, "Bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt division by division," and who told Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel leave Egypt. These are the same, Moshe and Aaron. On the day when Adonai spoke to Moshe in the land of Egypt, he said, "I am Adonai. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I say to you." Moshe answered Adonai, "Look, I am such a poor speaker that Pharaoh won't listen to me." Chapter 7. But Adonai said to Moshe, "I have put you in the place of God to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be your prophet. You are to say everything I order you, and Aaron, your brother, is to speak to Pharaoh and tell him to let the people of Israel leave his land, that I will make him hard-hearted, even though I will increase my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies, my people, the sons of Israel, out of the land of Egypt with great acts of judgment. Then, when I stretch out my hand over Egypt and bring the people of Israel out from among them, the Egyptians will know that I am Adonai." Moshe and Aaron did exactly what Adonai ordered them to do. Moshe was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "When Pharaoh said to you, 'Perform a miracle,' tell Aaron to take a staff and throw it down in front of Pharaoh so that it can become a snake." Moshe and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did this as Adonai had ordered. Aaron threw down his staff in front of Pharaoh and his servants, and it turned into a snake. But Pharaoh, in turn, called for the sages and sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same thing, making use of their secret arts. Each one threw his staff down, and they turned into snakes. But Aaron's staff swallowed up theirs. Nevertheless, Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, and he didn't listen to them, as Adonai had said would happen. Adonai said to Moshe, Pharaoh is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to the water. Stand on the riverbank to confront him. Take in your hand the staff which was turned into a snake and say to him, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to say, let my people go so that they can worship me in the desert. But until now you haven't listened. So Adonai says, this will let you know that I am Adonai. I will take the staff in my hand and strike the water in the river, and it will be turned into blood. The fish in the river will die, the river will stink, and the Egyptians won't want to drink water from the river. Adonai said to Moshe, say to Aaron, take your staff, reach out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the rivers, canals, ponds, and all the reservoirs, so that they can turn into blood. There will be blood throughout the whole land of Egypt, even in the wooden buckets and stone jars. Moshe and Aaron did exactly what Adonai had ordered. He raised the staff and in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, struck the water in the river, and all the water in the river was turned into blood. The fish in the river died, and the river stank so badly that the Egyptians couldn't drink its water. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts, so that Pharaoh was made hard-hearted and didn't listen to them. As Adonai had said would happen. Pharaoh just turned and went back to his palace without taking any of this to heart. All the Egyptians dug around the river for water to drink because they couldn't drink the river water. 7 days after Adonai had struck the river, Adonai said to Moshe, go into Pharaoh and say to him, here is what Adonai says, let my people go so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will strike all your territory with frogs. The river will swarm with frogs. They will go up, enter your palace, go into your bedroom, onto your bed. They will enter the houses of your servants and your people, and go into your ovens and kneading bowls. The frogs will climb all over you, your people, and your servants. Chapter 8. Adonai said to Moshe, say to Aaron, reach out your hand with your staff over the rivers, canals, and ponds, and cause frogs to come up onto the land of Egypt. Aaron put out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same with their secret arts and brought up frogs onto the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said, intercede with Adonai to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let the people go and sacrifice to Adonai. Moshe said to Pharaoh, not only that, but you can have the honor of naming the time when I will pray for you, your servants, and your people, to be rid of the frogs, both yourselves and your homes, and that they stay only in the river. He answered, tomorrow. Moshe said, it will be as you have said, and from this you will learn that Adonai our God has no equal. The frogs will leave you and your homes, also your servants and your people. They will stay in the river only. Moshe and Aaron left Pharaoh's presence, and Moshe cried to Adonai about the frogs he had brought on Pharaoh. Adonai did as Moshe had asked. The frogs died in the houses, courtyards, and fields. They gathered them in heaps till the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that he had been given some relief, he made himself hard-hearted and would not listen to them, just as Adonai had said would happen. Adonai said to Moshe, "Say to Aaron, reach out with your staff and strike the dust on the ground. It will become lice throughout all the land of Egypt." They did it. Aaron reached out his hand with the staff and struck the dust on the ground, and there were lice on people and animals. All the dust on the ground became lice throughout the whole land of Egypt. The magicians tried with their secret arts to produce lice, but they couldn't. There were lice on people and animals. When the magician said to Pharaoh, Then the magician said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, so that he didn't listen to them, just as Adonai had said would happen. Adonai said to Moshe, "Get up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh when he goes out to the water, and say to him, 'Here is what Adonai says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. Otherwise, if you won't let my people go, I will send swarms of insects on you, your servants, and your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of swarms of insects, and likewise the ground they stand on. But I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of insect will be there, so that you can realize that I am Adonai right here in the land. Yes, I will distinguish between my people and your people, and this sign will happen by tomorrow." Adonai did it. Terrible swarms of insects went into Pharaoh's palace and to all his servants' houses. The insects ruined the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said, "Go and sacrifice to your God here in the land." But Moshe replied, "It would be inappropriate for us to do that, because the animal we sacrifice to Adonai our God is an abomination to the Egyptians. Won't the Egyptians stone us to death if before their very eyes we sacrifice what they consider an abomination? No, we will go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to Adonai our God, as he has ordered us to do." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go so that you can sacrifice to Adonai your God in the desert. Only you're not to go very far away. Intercede on my behalf." Moshe said, "All right, I'm going away from you, and I will intercede with Adonai so that tomorrow the swarms of insects will leave Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Just make sure that Pharaoh stops playing games with the people by preventing them from going and sacrificing to Adonai." Moshe left Pharaoh and interceded with Adonai. And Adonai did what Moshe had asked. He removed the swarms of insects from Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Not one remained. But this time, too, Pharaoh made himself stubborn and didn't let the people go. Chapter 9. Then Adonai said to Moshe, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him, 'Here is what Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go, so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go and persist in holding on to them, the hand of Adonai is on your livestock in the field, on the horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and flocks, and will make them suffer a devastating illness. But Adonai will distinguish between Egypt's and Israel's livestock. nothing belonging to the people of Israel will die. Adonai determined the exact time by saying, tomorrow Adonai will do this in the land. The following day, Adonai did it. All the livestock of Egypt died, but not one of the animals belonging to the people of Israel died. Pharaoh investigated and found that not even one of the animals of the people of Israel had died. Nevertheless, Pharaoh's heart remained stubborn, and he didn't let the people go. Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, take handfuls of ashes from a kiln and let Moshe throw them in the air before Pharaoh's eyes. They will turn into fine dust over all the land of Egypt and become infected sores on men and animals throughout Egypt. So they took ashes from a kiln, stood in front of Pharaoh, and threw them in the air. And they became infected sores on men and animals. The magicians couldn't even stand in Moshe's presence because of the sores, which were on them as well as on the other Egyptians. But Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted so that he didn't listen to them, just as Adonai had said to Moshe. Adonai said to Moshe, get up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh, and say to him, here is what Adonai says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. For this time I will inflict my plagues on you, yourself, and on your officials and your people, so that you will realize that I am without equal in all the earth. By now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with such severe plagues that you would have been wiped off the earth. But it is for this very reason that I have kept you alive, to show you my power, and so that my name may resound throughout the whole earth. Since you are still setting yourself up against my people and not letting them go, tomorrow, about this time, I will cause a hailstorm so heavy that Egypt has had nothing like it from the day it was founded until now. Therefore, send and hurry to bring indoors all your livestock and everything else you have in the field. For hail will fall on every human being and animal left in the field that hasn't been brought home, and they will die. Whoever among Pharaoh's servants feared what Adonai had said had his slaves and livestock escape into the houses. But those who had no regard for Adonai, for what Adonai had said, left their slaves and livestock in the field. Adonai said to Moshe, reach out your hand toward the sky so that there will be hail in all the land of Egypt, falling on people, animals, and everything growing in the field throughout the land of Egypt. Moshe reached out with his staff toward the sky, and Adonai sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. Adonai caused it to hail on the land of Egypt. It hailed, and fire flashed up with the hail. It was terrible, worse than any hailstorm in all of Egypt since it became a nation. Throughout all the land of Egypt, the hail struck everything in the field, people and animals. And the hail struck every plant growing in the field and broke every tree there. But in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, there was no hail. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said to them, this time I have sinned. Adonai is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Intercede with Adonai. We can't take any more of this terrible thunder and hail, and I will let you go. You will stay no longer. Moshe said to him, as soon as I have gone out from the city, I will spread out my hands to Adonai. The thunder will end, and there won't be any more hail, so that you can know that the earth belongs to Adonai. But you and your servants, I know you still won't fear Adonai, God. The flax and barley were ruined because the barley was ripe and the flax in bud. But the wheat and buckwheat were not ruined because they come up later. Moshe went out of the city, away from Pharaoh, and spread out his hands to Adonai. The thunder and hail ended, and the rain stopped pouring down on the earth. When Pharaoh saw that the rain, hail, and thunder had ended, he sinned still more by making himself hard-hearted, he and his servants. Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel go, just as Adonai had said through Moshe. Early on in the reading, God had told Moshe that he was going to reveal himself as Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. And he said that the patriarchs did not know him as Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. They knew him as El Shaddai, Elohim, God Almighty. Yet we know from the Torah itself that they did know Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh was God's divine name. Abraham knew it. Yitzhak knew it. Yaakov knew it. So, what is this? This should cause us to ask the question, what's going on here? Why is the force of this so strong? And it has to do, and Tony Robinson brings this out in the handout, it has to do with an attribute of God. Now, let's set the stage for this. God is the creator. He told Moshe that he had made everything that he could see with his eyes, and made his eyes too. Yeah? He created everything from nothing. Nothing. He spoke it into the existence. Our God is an infinite God. He's infinite. He even created time. He created time. God is outside of time. He is not bound by time. He created time. He created the entire universe. We cannot even imagine how many atoms, look, even how many molecules are in our own body, and then the atoms that make up those molecules. We have no concept of that. We cannot, it boggles the mind. It boggles our mind. The power of our God is such that he knows every single atom in the entire universe intimately well. And because our God is an infinite God, it's not difficult for him at all. It's as easy as can be. In our humanness, we cannot understand such a God. We cannot understand infinity. We have the concept, but we cannot comprehend it. But that just scratches the surface, as God is beyond all of that. What is so amazing that he would take such a loving concern about us, all of mankind. And part of our limitation here is the fact that Scripture says that we are created in the image of God. We were not made infinite. We are finite images of God. There's an aspect of our spiritual nature, not physical, but spiritual. That's the connection. That's the connection with God. So, the only way that we can understand something about who God is to the extent that God reveals himself to us. He can reveal himself in several ways. One is through creation itself. And this is miraculous, of course. It is miraculous, but it's natural. It doesn't appear miraculous. But there are natural miracles. But many take them for granted because it can be explained as natural laws. And this is the difficulty for many who hold to evolutionary theory, for example, because they can explain by natural processes. And so they basically equate the natural processes with God. In fact, to the argument, you say God has always been. We say the material universe has always been. They make no distinction. In that sense, the material universe is God. It's always existed. And so there's no personal connection with God. But God makes a personal connection. In fact, he says the creation does reveal his glory. We can learn something about God just by observing creation. But then he comes in and he uses himself to reveal to Abraham, Isaac, even Adam and Eve. There was a level of intimacy. So in the first part of Genesis, you have God referred to as Elohim. But then the intimacy comes in to Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. And so this aspect here, this is God's divine name. This is Babylonian script, also known as Aramaic script. That's what we're familiar with. We call it modern Hebrew or classical Hebrew, Aramaic script. It came as a result of the exile to Babylon when they came back. That's what we commonly see as Hebrew. The ancient script, these are the same letters that are here. That is sometimes referred to as Canaanite script. It's the ancient Hebrew. So it's the same letters though. Yod, He, Vah, He. God's divine name. And it means the letters Nil, behold, or as Tony likes to say, a window, nail, and a window. So, we're out of time. But the point that's being made is that here we see God revealed at a whole nother level. And that's what he means. When he said El Shaddai, God Almighty, that was the family, not even a tribal. That was a close intimacy there of relationship. But now, at this point, as Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh, he's revealing himself as a national God, the God of a nation. And now he is bringing supernatural power into play, which he did not do before. Not to this extent. And what an extent we're going to see. And he's going to show by Egypt that this is spiritual warfare. He is fighting the demonic gods of Egypt. They are polytheistic, and he has arrayed himself against that whole panoply of Hasatanic rebellion and showed that he is truly the one and only eternal, infinite God. And thank you for your attention. So, we're done.